Welcome to Birdseeds. As always, this is Joe Bird. Thank you so much for listening. Today, we're going to do something we haven't done in a while. I brought a guest back on. It's been a bit since I've had a guest on. So I'm going to welcome Jamie Lenes. Jamie Lenes is a lender with SWBC. I've actually known Jamie for well before I got into real estate. Actually, when my wife used to work for the Howard County Chamber of Commerce and I'd go to all the events for the free beer, I would always hang out with Jamie when we were at the events because he was a sponsor of the chamber. So welcome, Jamie. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Absolutely. You want to give a quick background on you so everybody knows who you are?
Been doing residential mortgages for about 26 years now, coming on 27. Here in the area, been doing it a long time now, and just happy to be a part of this.
Awesome. So the mortgage industry is pretty much identical from 26, 27 years ago to today, correct?
Nothing to it.
Exactly.
The irony to that is somebody made a comment. They said where we were when we got in 98, when I got in 98, 99, we've gained back almost to where we started back then. Everything we had made up
Yep.
and gained in those 24 years, the last 2 or 3 years or so,
Yeah.
we've gained or lost most of it back.
Yeah, and you're talking right there?
Right there.
Yeah,
So yes,
exactly.
to answer your
Yeah.
question, yes,
Yeah.
we are working our way back
Exactly.
to 26 years ago.
And all the paperworck's that's the same, right?
Something like that.
Exactly.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. I always like to say that, and I've been in real estate for 12, 13 years, so I was before the 2008 crash.
Right.
But I always like to say it used to be about, does the bank really think you're going to pay the loan back, and that's who gets the loan?
Yeah.
And now it's just, do you check boxes on paper?
And there's a little bit, we've had a discussion recently, there is a little bit more of validating now. It's not just checking boxes. There's some back to some validation.
That's good.
With obviously with technology, good and bad, but it brings in some new challenges that come with it. So,
Yeah. I mean, we know the worst thing that could happen is a bunch of bad loans.
Correct.
That's bad for everybody.
Yes.
So I believe in, making sure people are qualified. Now, it can be
Absolutely.
overdone for sure.
Yep.
But yeah,
There's the happy medium.
there is a
somewhere.
happy medium.
Yep.
Always a happy medium.
Always happy medium.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I've known Jamie since before I got into real estate. Was actually at my realtor initiation or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, that Howard County Association of Realtor New Agent Orientation. That's the word.
Yep.
And ran into Jamie, was like, "What are you doing here?" Because frankly, I didn't even know what you did because I was so outside of the real estate space that a mortgage lender wasn't even something that was on my radar of a profession. I was in the music industry. I
Yeah.
couldn't afford a house. So like I didn't even put two and two together. I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm a lender." So obviously we've worked together ever since the beginning. And Jamie and I have always gotten lunch together. We've always stayed connected. We've always masterminded together, marketed together. Like we're always just trying to grow business together. And I remember very distinctly a conversation, and it's got to be probably 2013, 2014, maybe 15.
Yep.
We were getting lunch one day, and you talked about the concept of reticulate activator. And that always just stuck with me. And I've got my own sort of version of a definition of it, but I just wanted to bring you on the show, to talk about that because your conversation we had with that years and years ago has always stuck with me. And I think it's really relevant today.
Well, it's funny, and we talk about it. And so it started for me, it was a new concept to me. Even though it goes on, you don't think about it. And it was
Sure.
a new concept to me. I was doing some business coaching, maybe 20 years ago. And at one of the conferences for it, we were listening to some coaches, including the head coach on it. And he brought up and he showed a picture of, at that time, the irony was a red Volkswagen Beetle.
Yep.
And the idea was, okay, you were so proud to get your red, Volkswagen Beetle that nobody has. And the irony is, as you drive around, you notice more and more Volkswagen Beetles.
Yeah.
And some are red and some are blue, but it's Volkswagen Beetles.
Absolutely.
And the premise of it is, whether it's you're buying a car and whatever that car is, you notice more and more people with that car. The same thing translates to business, which goes to our business in real estate. As you're getting involved in real estate, your senses are more aware of what's going on, and people you're talking to, even though you might not think you're talking about real estate, you do have that hint of talking of real estate, and you tune into different conversations, and it leads to real estate. So I think it's bringing back the idea of the reticular activator that, hey, whatever that your new little thing is, or whatever your mindset is at that moment, that's what you're noticing. And that is what you're drawing to yourself and around you.
Exactly. So it's kind of funny that like the fact that I was not in real estate at all, was so outside of that world, and that you were a mortgage lender, I did not pay attention to that because that was so outside of my purview.
Right.
But then once I was in real estate, and it's like, oh, real estate lender, cool, boom, connection. Now
Yep.
I know what you do, and now I understand it. Now I'm going to remember it.
Yeah.
So it's even funny, like in our reintroduction to each other,
How
it
yeah,
was a
we were
reticulate
friends,
activation.
but how it brings back because
Yeah,
it's a similar industry, similar mindset, similar
exactly.
thoughts and plans that
Yeah,
go with it. So it was brought in with the premise of as you're talking to people, especially in this industry, depending whether you're the client or the professional,
right,
you are involved in it and you have to listen because that's what you're attracting.
right,
And it could be for new business, it could be for current business, it could be, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client that's doing something and they're hearing stuff out on the street because in their mind, that is they're now focused on.
exactly.
Whether it's right or wrong data or information, that's where you as a professional have to be
Yeah.
able to interpret.
Well, and I think that can be harnessed really well. So if you can explain that to your client, let's say you're actively working with somebody, you got a loan app in, they're under contract or going through the process, they are now going to be tuned to real estate in their lives, in their world. There's huge referral opportunities to come back to you in that because and explain to them, hey, now that you're in this process, you're going to see mortgage, you're going to see real estate, you're going to see everything everywhere. You're going to pinpoint these conversations at the office, at the water cooler. Do me a favor. Can you bring my name up to them if anything comes up?
Because you're the professional, you can help disseminate the information or the data they're getting.
Exactly.
You know, Johnny is buying a house for 300,000 and is getting 6% rate. Well, they found out that, Mr. Neighbor to them bought basically the same house and got 5. Why did they get 5 and you're getting 6 or whatever that is or
Right.
whatever that situation? That's where you have to be attuned to it because it's not just for new business, it's also help educating the continual
Yeah.
track down the line as they're talking to people.
Well, and then I'm going to go into like sort of a little bit more of the science. Not that I'm a scientist by
Right.
any means, but I'm going to go a little bit more of the science of reticulate activation. But it kind of falls right into that because it's a protective measure for your brain. So it's a way for your brain to filter out information it doesn't need and focus on information it does need. So in that moment where that buyer you're working with who's got 6%, and that might be a fantastic rate for that day with
Yep.
that credit score, with that zip code, with all those factors that play into things, right? But they are worried about getting ripped off. That is in their mind of I need to protect myself to make sure I don't get taken advantage of because it's big and scary and it's unknown. So they bump into somebody who maybe bought a house 2 years ago.
That's right.
And maybe their 5% rate was a horrible rate. Maybe they had really bad credit and they should have gotten a 4, but they had to get a 5 because they're line level adjustments. They don't know that. That's information that they don't know, and they are going to be more inclined to look at the I don't want to get ripped off than I'm getting the good deal.
And you've now lost your level of professionalism or trust with that borrower potentially
Correct.
because they just heard from the outside that whatever the deal is you're giving them, it's not a good deal,
Correct.
even though you don't know the data behind
Right.
the details.
It could be the best deal
That's
by
right.
far.
Yeah.
It could be
You're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to watermelons or whatever it
exactly,
is.
or even
And
apples to steaks.
yeah,
It's not even necessarily the same.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so that's where you, not just as the borrower, but as the professional, have to be aware of it because now,
exactly,
like you said, your client is now out there and their radar's up and
exactly.
they're looking, watching, listening, everything. And you have to be aware. So as they're asking you questions, you have to be aware of where they're coming from with it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think that proactiveness is really important to be like,
Mm,
this is what's going to happen. A, that's going to build trust. So they're going to, oh, you know what's going to happen. Like
right.
you've done this before and you've seen what
Oh,
clients do.
that's weird because so and so said it.
Right,
They already started talking to me about this.
exactly.
And it's like you knew.
It's funny when I'm sitting with a seller and my seller presentation, I go into I'm a big fan of psychology and I'm a big fan of psychology of sales, and I explain some of my psychology of sales to them when I'm sitting with them, and I don't want to say I do it to them because it's not doing it to them, but I showcase the psychology of sales as I'm doing it. I'm explaining what I'm doing as they're still having the effect that I want them to have.
Right.
And they go, the fact that I explained it to them and they do it, it's like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's talking
And the
about.
guard's down.
Exactly.
They trust you now.
Right.
It's building the trust.
I've opened the curtain. I've let them behind the scenes. I see what's
That's
going.
right.
They can see what's going
It's
on.
the honesty. It's the
It
truth.
is.
It's showing that you're a professional at what you do, and you respect them as well for being the client.
Right. Well,
To
and not that sales is magic, but it's just like the magician, right? Why do they always kind of show you behind this? Like, look, this is everything here, and it's
Yep.
not here, and then here's the card I pulled out, and it's because they're really trying to get you to believe and trust. If they just did that, you would go, oh, what's up your sleeve the whole time?
right.
Yeah, that's
Agreed.
awesome. That's awesome. So it's funny you mentioned the car. So one of my first sort of realizations, or I don't want to say realizations, but my first experience that I could look back and go, oh, that was that, was I was in the Caribbean on vacation when I was running my old music business. And there was a car that they had there that I was like, I wish they made that in the US because that would be because I was in the market to buy a car. It was like,
Sure.
that'd be the car I'm going to buy. It's exactly what I'm looking for. It's small, but it's a small SUV. It's raised up enough. It's got a hatchback. I love hatchbacks. And I saw it there. It was here the whole time. I just never noticed it. But I had this whole plan. I was going to import the car
Right.
from Europe to bring over because it was the exact car I needed. And the funniest part is it's not the car I bought anyway.
But it started your mind and your neurological
Yeah.
mindset to start looking. And as when you come back, it's funny thinking about it. When I bought my vehicle I have now, the color I got I thought was a unique color.
Hmm.
And as I started driving down the road more and more, what did I notice?
That color.
That color.
Exactly.
And it goes with what you're saying.
Yep.
But you don't pay attention to it before because you think it's something unique, and it
Right.
is still somewhat unique, but it's
Right.
not
Right. It's not the color everybody has, but it's
exactly
still not as unique as you think it is.
correct.
Yeah. That's funny.
So it translate, I think, to not just business, but to
Oh yeah.
life.
Yeah. So let's go into the science and then we'll go back into like the
Sure.
sales side of it. So again, I heard the concept originally from you and I heard it sort of in that sales mentality and that like, hey, you're gonna pay attention to the thing you're thinking about. So one of the comments on it is, why do positive affirmations work? Why does sitting there saying to yourself, I'm successful, I'm good looking, I'm, a good salesperson, I'm wealthy, or whatever the different affirmations you say to yourself, why do they work? It's because your mind will go to where you're telling it to go. It focuses on the things that's in front of it. Why should you never talk bad about yourself? Your mind doesn't know when it's a joke, and it will focus on the things it sees the most. It filters information. It's a natural process to filter information to make sure that you're not wasting your time and effort and distracting yourself from stuff your mind doesn't think is important because it's not what's in front of you, and it focuses on the things that it thinks important.
I agree. And I think it goes to not just that, but especially as we're raising kids, I think that's even more important
Yeah.
because I think they sense us.
Oh yeah.
And so whether look, we all have bad days, you have to be able to then sort of shut it down when you come in the door because I think your kids sense it.
Right.
And then they bring down themselves because, well, dad or mom are upset and therefore I'm going to be upset. So I
Exactly.
think there is some of that. And we all go through life and have to be able to play through that sort of, but and recognize, okay, it's just a moment. Okay, take a deep breath, put it in a bubble, let it go, and
Exactly.
get back to it.
Exactly.
Instead of letting it, you said, down the rabbit hole and just
Yep.
keep going.
Yep. So I'm looking at the website here from University of Minnesota Extension, and on the website here they talk about use the term consciously, use the term intend. What is it? What it does is it takes away the doubt and it kind of kicks the reticulate activated system into high gear. It helps you to filter out the pieces you can't help, or you can help with the intention. And so the conscious mind brings into the subconscious mind. So you start to see and hear and understand the things that will help you to get to what you're intending to do. So it's just kind of that unspoken. I think it's really cool. According to Google AI, reticulate activating system is a network of neurons in the brainstem that controls sleep wake cycles, alertness, and wakefulness. So I thought that was super interesting. So we talk about how it's intention, how it's filtering out information, but it does a lot more than that for you. It's what keeps you consistent. And a malfunctioning reticulate activation system could be treacherous, can absolutely treacherous. So what does it do with the sleep wake cycles? It helps the brain transition from the sleep rhythms, allowing for both slow and fast sleep. It helps you regulate your alertness and your wakefulness, modulates your behaviors, your sensory perception. It helps your brain consciously perceive sensory stimuli and survival. It acts as a survival mechanism by analyzing incoming information and filtering out what's irrelevant. So it's located in the brainstem, which is above your spinal cord. It's about 2 inches long. It's the width of a pencil, and it receives input from the visceral, somatic, and sensory systems. Also interesting, it's one of the things that degenerates early in Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
So if you think about Alzheimer's not really understanding and
Processing.
exactly. So I don't know, but I'd be curious if any like neurodivergencies, if that's affected in that, if like the attention span, I could see that having play there. I don't know I have no record of that,
Right.
and I can Google to see if ADHD and that makes any sense. Let's go ahead and do that. But I think it's really interesting how important it is to just the overall function of your being.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is involved in ADHD. Yep. People with ADHD, the reticulate activation system is dysregulated, which can lead to inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. People with ADHD may have circadian cycles that skew toward higher activity levels in the evening, leading to later bedtimes and waking times. And filtering information, low neurotransmitter activity in the RAS can make it hard to filter out important information from background noise. So it's super interesting, like how important it is, and then
It's
what
everyday life. You
exactly,
just
and then how that can be used as a skill set in sales and in business and things like that. So, do you have any examples of how you have used it in business?
I think a little bit of it is to being as you're talking to your client, especially once you've built the trust with them. I think it's important to let them know as you continue through, hey, I'm always here not just for you, but for your friends, colleagues, people you're talking to. As you said, don't keep me a secret. And it's not that you're necessarily asking for more business per se, it's you want to help be able to interpret data that they're all hearing
Right.
and being able to process it, whether it's coming from the media or their next door neighbor or something they read in the paper or the internet or whatever it is. I think it's important. I'm sure in your daily occurrences, you run into the same questions we do. We'll get 1,000 questions and oh well, Johnny said it should be this or Johnny said it should be that. And not that Johnny's wrong, but Johnny doesn't have all the facts to be able to give you the correct answer and to be able to interpret the data that they're giving you is maybe not complete
Right.
and not the whole you're only getting a snippet of it. You're not getting the whole picture to be able to make the correct decision that's best for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because it could be anything from locking in a rate or writing an offer on a house and what's the proper price or listing a house at what's the proper price or whatever that situation is as we're trying to be professional. I think that's important. I think those are the kinds of situations to us, or if somebody calls in, hey, on a servicing question, and being able to just, where are they coming from?
Right.
What's their issue? Okay, you know, they're getting beat up, and all their neighbors have been beat up on the same issue. Okay, now we have a real problem to start looking at and saying, okay, is it just the market? Is it just that issue?
Right.
Or is it, oh no, you guys are all wrong. You're not seeing the correct side of it.
Correct. That's exactly right. So, in the research I've done in my practice, one of the big things with using the reticulate activating system as a sales method or as a marketing method is making the experience unique. Because if it's just monotonous and just in there, it's not going to stick out in their mind as being something to pay attention to. So why is it that the car makes you then see other cars? Because buying a car is an important, stressful, exciting, all the emotions. It's all the emotions all wrapped into one, just like buying a house would be, right?
Yep.
So it's something that's already going to stick out to them as being like impactful. And then if you can make that experience even just different than what they expected, it's going to stick out more. Another way is repetition. So when you listen to the radio, which who listens to radio anymore, but you listen to the radio and it says call 1-800-lawyers or whatever it is, they say the number three times. And you'll notice it's always three times. It's always three times. And saying the name, saying the number, and I leave voicemails, I do the exact same thing. But it's training, it's trying to get their brain to recognize this is important, pay attention to this.
Or a certain jingle to
Correct.
in an advertisement. So you
Correct.
recognize when you hear the jingle, you think of that product.
Right.
It's the game it is the repetition. It's the notifications of stuff
Correct.
and recognizing things but it goes with business. So then when you
Yeah.
ask for business, that's the idea. You can almost apply a little bit of that law of attraction. It's, hey, I recognize I'm looking for a couple more referral sources. Well, what am I recognize I'm in it. I see this side might not be the way I want to do business, but this side is.
Hmm.
So you can then disseminate which side you want to go to. And based on that, now you're already, the system is working
Exactly.
to say, okay, well, if I want to be on the left side, I need to find those kinds of people. Who do I know
Right.
by doing that? And that brings it up.
Exactly. So the two other points I want to make is kind of what you just said, tying it to the emotion as well. So, you're not just answering the question, but eliciting their emotion in the answer to that question or tying it down. So, another way to say that is when I'm talking to a seller and they're talking about selling their house. They don't really want to sell their house. That's not what their goal is. Their goal is to get money from selling their house, and their goal is to move to Florida or Ohio or California or Texas or Guam, who knows,
Right.
right? Wherever they want to go. That's the goal. The act of selling the house is not a pleasant process. I mean, we make it the easiest it can be and the pleasant it can
Right.
be, but you're people in your house, nitpicking your house. It's not a pleasant experience. So instead of selling them on, and again, we're going to help them with the sales process. That's what they're hiring us to do. But focusing on the end goal, focusing on, well, when this is done and we get you to Hawaii, what's it going to be like there? And so really just hammering into the outcome, not the process, I think is super important. And I remember talking to you about that in marketing, where you were like, "Hey, how can we join marketing?" I said, "The problem with marketing as a mortgage person is nobody wants a mortgage.
Right. They
Nobody
don't want
wants a
the pain
mortgage.
and the whatever that takes
Forget the
it. Right.
process. They don't want a mortgage.
Right.
They don't want to have to make the payments
Correct.
and deal with it and all that kind of stuff. They want the house. So market getting the house. Market giving them, affording them the ability to get the house and move into that house. They don't want to buy the house. They want to be in the house. They want to own the house. That's what they want. So really just hammering into the outcome as what you're marketing will then help them stay in the positive mindset to look for the positive.
And you brought something up, just when you said they don't really want to sell the house, they want the money from the house. The same coach that was talking about the RA system, they were saying it's the questions of 5, 6, and 7. One's 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to sell a house. Why? Well, I want to move to wherever. This. Why though?
Right.
Oh, but when you get to the pain point, if you want to
Right.
call it that,
Exactly.
it's the okay. My kid just had the granddaughter, and that's where it's in California. Now their whole real reason, but it's it's the system working. It's
Correct.
recognizing
Correct.
they're talking, and why are they talking? Why are they talking about selling?
Correct.
And they're talking to other people, and
Yeah.
it continues down once you've notified and picked up stuff. Then it's the continuation of really define the pain points of
Correct.
what's their reasons, and once you know that, then you can really be an advisor
Correct.
to say, you're right, it isn't about selling this house. It's you need X dollars out of the house to be able to go, wherever you're going, or
Right.
whatever the
For
next,
whether it's for retirement, whether it's for
whatever that
grandkids, whether it's for
situation
work or
is.
whatever it is.
But
Exactly.
that could also help them make a decision,
Exactly.
and to help you be the professional to be able to advise them.
Right.
Hey, this is the road we're taking. We thought we were going left. We're actually going to go right, because
But
based
this is
on,
why.
and this is why.
Exactly. What we can't see here that I happen to know is the road's closed over there.
Correct.
So we need to go this way and go around that road closure
That's
versus
right.
sit in traffic for the next 5 hours.
And that's the professional part of you
Exactly.
that's able to guide them.
Exactly.
And yes, they felt the pain, and now you've made it as pleasant as possible, knowing they were about to hit a dead end and get really frustrated because they were going to have to make a U-turn,
Exactly.
and you avoided the U-turn.
Yep. Exactly. The last way that I've used it in my business, and again, the idea is focusing on the important parts to make sure that that's what they pay attention to, that it sticks out to them, is using your tonality, your rate of speech, things like that, to make sure that when you're talking to them, if it's something you don't really like, it's in the noise. Not that you don't want them to think about it, they just don't really care. You kind of talk fast, a little bit higher pitched. But when we get you to Florida, and you slow down your rate of speech, drop your pitch down, focus on that, it will help them. And subconsciously, their reticulating activating system will go, that's important, pay attention to that. And I'm now going to keep seeing that everywhere I go.
Correct. Yeah. All of
Yeah.
a sudden, they're next thing you know, they're looking at an ad on the internet or whatever. And it goes back. I think you and I've talked about it before about, how come we talk about pick something, a car, and what's your first things on your,
Oh, yeah.
your internet searches or
Yeah.
whatever. It's the cars. They're using it behind the scenes. They recognize,
Yeah.
hey, you obviously searched whatever car. Well, why?
Right.
Okay. They recognize, okay, Joe
Right.
Bird is in the market for
Exactly.
the car. And so it now
Right.
makes you think. And
Is the phone listening to you? Maybe. But if you're talking about the car, did you search it last night too?
Right.
Probably. And
Right.
now that you've talked about it, you've probably been getting car ads for the last
that's right.
for your
Not
entire
even
life.
realizing
You just
you're
never
doing
noticed it. Didn't pay attention. You scrolled
Didn't
right
pay
past it.
attention.
So
There's your
those,
RA
even if it's not listening to you, which it probably is, we all know it probably is. But let's pretend like it isn't. It's those two things right there that cause it to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So it's in life, even if you don't even think you're about it.
exactly.
It exists. It's
Exactly.
alive. It's forming around you.
It is. Yeah, and it's a natural process. Like I said, it's part of your survival. And
Yeah.
that's what I really thought cool. A lot of these like sales things or marketing things or just whatever you want to call them, they're usually strictly based in psychology. this is physiological as well as psychology. And I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, because it sticks with you, and
Yeah.
it's a bigger trigger than just, you know.
Well, and as I know you know, and I've talked about some of the stuff on the podcast, I am huge into the interplay between the psychology and physiology and how they are far more related than we've ever understood and we like to admit. But you feel you feel emotional pain physically, you feel physical pain emotionally. It
Sure.
is all connected. And this is just a prime example of how in the background, your autonomous nervous system is doing things that affect how you experience life.
Absolutely, and I think it's used to make yourself feel good, or I
Mhm.
mean, or
Yeah,
get yourself, excuse me, out of a bad situation. You might be down in the dumps for whatever reason, and the chicken noodle soup is what pulls you out. Well,
exactly.
you're thinking about it. All of a sudden, you recognize you didn't even think that you knew Panera had it, but you didn't realize that the other three stores had chicken noodle
Hmm.
too. And all of a sudden, now your mind is going because you're recognizing and seeing the chicken noodle.
And it's also the intentionality. Because why
Yeah,
did you have chicken noodle soup? Because you had a sore throat.
right.
So I'm going to get better. I'm going to eat this chicken noodle soup so I feel better. Well, guess what? You feel better.
That's right.
Did the chicken noodle soup help out? Maybe.
Yeah, it's your
Who
comfort. You're
cares?
right. It's your
It was the intentionality, and then your mindset. I'm going to do that because
yeah,
that's what you've set forth to do. You've put into your mindset and into action the things to feel better. You're now going to start feeling better.
and it translates to business, like
It
you
does.
said. Yep.
It does. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on this. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. Feel free. You're always welcome to call my business line at 443-574-9534. Or of course on my cell at 443-838-9881. You can email me, Jamie, Jamie Lenes, Lenes at SWBC.com.
And what states are you licensed in for lending?
Companies pretty much nationwide, but I am personally Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
Okay, cool.
So
And if you're outside of those states, so obviously in those states, reach out to Jamie for refinance, for purchase mortgages, for anything like that. If you're outside of
always
the
happy to
states,
help
he can certainly put you in
internally.
touch
Yep.
with somebody else in the
In the
office.
company. Yep.
Yep. I mean, I did that personally.
Yeah.
Jamie helped me with my property in North Carolina, with Dave Hudson in his office helped me finalize
Yep.
the loan. So he'll always take care of you. One of the things I've always liked about Jamie, and the reason I've always continued to refer him, not just because I knew him beforehand, and not just because he was one of the first lenders I talked to when I got in the business, is I've always appreciated his honesty and his transparency. If he doesn't have the best deal for you, he's going to flat out tell you, go somewhere else. Don't go with me because my bank doesn't have this product or whatever it might be,
Yep.
or there's a grant over here that you should go with. It's always been about what's best interest for the consumer. And I've always appreciated, I call it the bedside manner, where you're just able to sort of slow down, get on the pace of the person you're talking to, and make sure that they understand every detail. And I've always believed in that, powering the consumer by education to have them make
I
the
think
best
that's
decision.
the most important. So
Yep.
thank you for that.
Yep.
Guy.
So, well, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being a
Absolutely.
great
Thank you
lending
for
partner.
having me.
Absolutely. This has been Bird Seeds. Joe Bird, Jamie Lenes. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.